Victoria Blackwell threw her head back and laughed so hard her $50,000 diamond earrings swung wildly against her neck. 15 minutes, she repeated, her voice dripping with poison. You a grease monkey in this pathetic dump? The black mechanic said nothing. He just stared at her with eyes that held something she couldn't name, something that made her laughter die in her throat. Miss Blackwell, he said quietly, I know exactly who you are, but you have no idea who I am. And when you find out, you're going to wish your fancy truck had broken down anywhere else but here. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Part 1. The Breakdown. The Range Rover coughed twice and died. Victoria Blackwell slammed both palms against the steering wheel hard enough to make her wrists ache. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Gone wrong, check engine temperature warning, oil pressure, every single light screaming at her in orange and red. No, 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 no. She grabbed her phone. 2 hours. She had exactly 2 hours to reach Mexico City for the most important meeting of her entire career. $400 million. Japanese investors from Toyota. The chance to prove to her father that she wasn't just a pretty face with a famous last name. And here she was, stranded on some godforsaken stretch of Mexican highway, surrounded by nothing but cornfields and cows that stared at her like she was the idiot. Victoria Blackwell was not a woman who handled failure well. She had never needed to learn. Born into the Blackwell automotive dynasty, educated at the finest schools money could buy. Swiss boarding schools, Columbia University, Harvard MBA internships at Goldman Sachs. Her life had been a perfectly orchestrated series of victories. Everything planned, everything purchased, everything guaranteed. Until now. She tried the ignition again. The engine made a sound like a dying animal and went silent. Damn it! She stepped out of the vehicle, her $1,200 Louboutin heels immediately sinking into the dirt. The heat hit her like a physical assault. Her white Armani silk blouse began sticking to her back within seconds. That's when she saw the sign. Johnson Auto Repair. General Repairs. The letters were so faded, she could barely read them. The building looked like it might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. Rust everywhere. Oil stains that had become permanent features of the concrete. A calendar from 3 years ago still hanging on one wall. Victoria felt her lip curl in disgust. What could she possibly expect from a place like this? What kind of miracle could some village mechanic perform on a vehicle worth more than he probably earned in his entire miserable life? But she had no choice. Hello? She shouted, her voice sharp with impatience. Is anyone here? I need help immediately. For a long moment, nothing. Then a figure emerged from the shadows of the workshop. He was a black man, maybe late 30s, with the kind of face that could have been handsome if it wasn't so exhausted. His navy blue overalls were so completely covered in grease and oil that they looked like abstract art. His hands were rough-scarred, the hands of a man who had worked hard every single day of his life. Marcus Johnson wiped his palms on a rag that only seemed to redistribute the grime rather than remove it. Good afternoon, ma'am, he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm, with a slight southern accent that Victoria immediately categorized as inferior. How can I help you today? She pointed at her Range Rover like she was identifying a criminal in a lineup. My truck broke down. I need you to fix it right now, this instant. I have an extremely important meeting in Mexico City, and I cannot afford to waste my time. She paused, looking around with barely concealed contempt. In a place like this. So I need you to work fast, very fast. Do you understand what I'm saying? Marcus walked toward the vehicle without a word. He didn't react to her tone, didn't flinch at her condescension, just moved with quiet efficiency, his worn work boots leaving tracks in the dust. He opened the hood and leaned in his head, disappearing into the mechanical maze of the engine. He listened, touched cables and hoses with expert fingers, closed his eyes and felt vibrations that told him stories no computer diagnostic ever could. Victoria watched with her arms crossed, tapping her heel against the ground in an impatient rhythm. Well, she demanded after what felt like an eternity, but was actually only 5 minutes. What's the verdict? And please tell me you can actually fix it because I really don't have time for... Marcus closed the hood gently. Mass airflow sensor, he said, and a cooling system hose that burst from excessive pressure. You've probably been ignoring warning signs for days. He wiped his hands again. I have the parts. It'll be ready in 15 minutes. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Victoria laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh. It wasn't the practiced, sophisticated chuckle she used at charity galas and board meetings. This was something raw and ugly. A cruel, mocking cackle that echoed off the crumbling walls of the workshop. She took off her Chanel sunglasses to look him directly in the eyes. 15 minutes, she repeated, still laughing. You're telling me that you, a grease monkey working in this dump, are going to fix in 15 minutes what the certified mechanics at the official Range Rover dealership couldn't even diagnose in 3 full days. Marcus said nothing. Look at this place. Victoria continued, gesturing wildly. Look at yourself. Do you seriously expect me to trust my Range Rover, a vehicle that cost $180,000 with technology more advanced than anything you've probably ever seen in your life, to someone who can't even keep his work clothes clean? Still, Marcus said nothing. To someone whose tools look like they belong in a museum. To someone who... She stopped searching for the most cutting words she could find. To someone who's clearly peaked in life right here in this pathetic little shack in the middle of nowhere. Marcus looked down at his overalls. At the grease stains that mapped 1,000 repairs. 1,000 honest days of work under the punishing sun. His hands, scarred and calloused, clenched slowly into fists. But when he raised his eyes to meet hers, there was no anger in them. There was something else. Something that made Victoria's laughter catch in her throat. Ma'am, he said quietly, I'm just trying to help you get to your meeting. Help me? She laughed again, but it sounded forced now. Help me. Like you could possibly help someone like me. Like you have anything to offer someone who... Miss Blackwell. The way he said her name stopped her cold. Not ma'am. Her actual name. And there was something in his voice, a weight, a meaning that she couldn't decode. How do you know my name? She demanded. I never told you my name. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment. His dark eyes seemed to hold depths she couldn't fathom. Pain, yes, but also something else. Recognition. History. A story she didn't know she was part of. I know a lot about you, Miss Blackwell, he said softly. I know your full name is Victoria Elizabeth Blackwell. I know you're the only daughter of Robert Blackwell and Catherine Harrington Blackwell. I know you turned 32 on March 20th this year. I know you went to Swiss boarding schools, then Columbia, then Harvard. I know you live in a $7 million penthouse in Santa Fe with a view of the whole city. Victoria took an involuntary step backward. Her heart had started pounding in a way it never had before, not from exertion, but from something that felt dangerously close to fear. Who are you? She whispered. Are you some kind of stalker? Because I swear to God, if you're threatening me, I'm not threatening you. Then how do you know all that? How do you know anything about me? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because my mother spent 27 years of her life telling me about you. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Your mother? Victoria shook her head, confused. What does your mother have to do with... Her name was Ruth. Ruth Johnson. The name hit Victoria like a physical blow. Ruth, Mama Ruth. The woman who had made her hot chocolate with cinnamon when she had nightmares as a child. The woman who had sung her lullabies when her own mother was too busy with society functions to tuck her in. The woman who had taught her to braid hair, who had bandaged her scraped knees with gentle hands, who had celebrated every small achievement as if it were a miracle. The woman who had been more of a mother to her than her biological mother had ever been. Ruth, Victoria breathed. Mama Ruth? That's what you called her, isn't it? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. Mama Ruth. because she was more mama to you than your own. She worked for my family. For years. Since I was little. Victoria's mind was spinning memories flooding back that she had buried for so long. She made the best fried chicken. And she'd let me help her in the kitchen even though my mother said it was beneath me. And she'd tell me stories about growing up in Mississippi and... She trailed off, seeing something in Marcus's face that made her blood run cold. What happened to her? Victoria asked slowly. After she retired, we lost touch. I always meant to reach out, but I was so busy and... Lost touch. Marcus repeated the words like they were poison in his mouth. That's what you call it, lost touch. What do you mean? What are you saying? I'm saying my mother didn't retire Miss Blackwell. His voice was steady, but barely. I'm saying she got sick. Real sick. Cancer. The kind that eats you from the inside out. Victoria felt her stomach drop. I didn't know. Nobody told me. Nobody told you because nobody cared enough to tell you. Your family, the people she gave 27 years of her life to, didn't care enough to check on her. Not once. Not a single phone call. Not a single visit. That's not... We would have... If we had known... She died, Miss Blackwell. The words fell between them like a hammer. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days ago. In a county hospital that was so overcrowded, she had to wait on a gurney in the hallway for 6 hours before anyone even looked at her. She couldn't afford a private hospital. The family she had dedicated her entire adult life to, they were on a yacht in the Caribbean, celebrating your daddy's birthday. Victoria's legs felt weak. She reached out to steady herself against her Range Rover, but her hand was shaking so badly she nearly missed. No, she whispered. No, that's not... We didn't know. We would have helped. We would have... Would you... Marcus stepped closer, and for the first time there was heat in his voice. Not anger exactly. Something rawer. Would you really? Because let me tell you something about my mother, Miss Blackwell. She believed in you. God help her, she actually believed you were different from the rest of them. Marcus. She used to tell me stories about you. About the little girl who secretly donated her toys to orphanages, even though her daddy said it was bad for the family image. About the teenager who cried because she felt pressure to be perfect all the time. About the young woman who deep down had a good heart buried under all that privilege. His voice broke. She believed that someday you would remember who you really were. She believed that someday you would see people like us as actual human beings and not just invisible servants. Tears were streaming down Victoria's face, now ruining her $200 makeup. But she didn't care. She couldn't care. Everything she had thought she knew about herself was crumbling. I didn't forget her, she said weakly. I thought about her. I always meant to reach out. Thought about her. Marcus laughed bitterly. You thought about her. Do you know what my mother thought about Miss Blackwell? Do you know what she thought about while she was dying alone in that hospital? Victoria shook her head, unable to speak. You. She thought about you. And your brother. The children she had raised as her own. She kept asking if you were coming to visit. Kept telling the nurses that her babies would come soon. Kept believing right up until the end that you would walk through that door. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. You never came. You never even knew she was gone. Victoria slid down against the Range Rover until she was sitting in the dirt, not caring about her designer clothes, not caring about anything except the crushing weight of guilt that was pressing down on her chest. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. Marcus looked down at her, this woman who had mocked him, insulted him, treated him like he was less than human. This woman who was now broken and crying in the dirt in front of his humble workshop. And despite everything, despite all the anger and resentment he had carried for years, he felt something shift in his chest, because his mother had raised him better than this. There's something else, he said quietly. Something my mama wanted you to have. Victoria looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. What? Wait here. Marcus disappeared into the workshop. When he came back, he was carrying an old shoebox tied with a faded pink ribbon. I found this in her things after she passed, he said, kneeling down to hand it to her. It has your name on it. She kept it for years. I think she always hoped she'd get to give it to you herself. Victoria's hands trembled as she took the box. Her name was written on the lid in Ruth's familiar handwriting. That beautiful, careful penmanship she had learned in segregated Mississippi schools 60 years ago. She untied the ribbon slowly, almost afraid of what she might find inside. Photographs, dozens of them. Victoria as a baby cradled in Ruth's arms. Victoria as a toddler covered in flour, while helping in the kitchen. Victoria on her first day of school, Ruth beaming proudly beside her. Victoria at birthday parties, Christmases, graduations. And in every single photo, Ruth looked at her with such pure, unconditional love that Victoria felt her heart shatter all over again. But there was more. Beneath the photographs were letters. Dozens of letters all addressed to her, all written in Ruth's careful hand. None of them had ever been sent. She wrote to you for 27 years, Marcus said softly. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time something important happened in your life. She never sent them because she didn't think it was her place. She was just the help after all. Victoria picked up the first letter with shaking hands. My sweet Victoria, today, you turned 5 years old. I watched you blow out your candles, and I made a wish too, that you never lose that spark in your eyes, that kindness I see when you think nobody's watching. The world is going to try to harden you, baby girl. Don't let it. Don't ever let it. She picked up another dated 15 years later. My darling Victoria, I know you don't think I see you, but I do. I see you sneaking toys into my car for the children at the shelter. I see you crying in your room when the pressure gets too heavy. I see the real you behind all those fancy clothes and that fancy education. I see your heart, and it's beautiful. And another written just months before Ruth died. Victoria, I'm not feeling so well these days. Nothing for you to worry about. I don't want you to worry. But if something happens to me, I need you to know this. You were my daughter, not by blood but by love. Every lullaby I sang was for you. Every prayer I prayed was for you. Every day I worked in that big house, I did it for you and Marcus both. Please don't forget me. Please don't forget who you really are. Victoria clutched the letter to her chest and wept. She wept for the woman who had loved her unconditionally. She wept for the years she had wasted, the calls she had never made, the grave she had never visited. She wept for the person she had become, cold, arrogant, blind to the humanity of anyone she considered beneath her. She wept for the scared little girl Ruth had seen so clearly buried under decades of wealth and privilege and the desperate need to prove herself. Marcus stood there watching her cry, this woman who had insulted him so casually just minutes ago. And despite himself, despite all the pain and resentment he felt, tears sliding down his own cheeks. Because in this moment, they were both just children who had lost the same mother. She really loved you, Victoria finally said, her voice raw. She really truly loved both of us. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied softly. She did. Victoria looked up at him, mascara running down her face, dirt on her designer clothes, all pretense stripped away. Tell me about her, she whispered. Tell me about her last days. Tell me everything. I need to know. I need to understand what I missed. Marcus took a deep breath. It's a long story, Miss Blackwell. I have time. She glanced at her Range Rover, at the phone that was still buzzing with increasingly frantic messages about the $400 million meeting she was missing. I have all the time in the world. Marcus nodded slowly. Then let me fix your truck first, he said. Because unlike some folks, I keep my promises. 15 minutes, then we'll talk. He turned and walked toward the Range Rover, rolling up his sleeves. And Victoria sat there in the dirt, clutching a box full of letters from a dead woman, and realized that everything she thought she knew about her life was about to change. Marcus moved toward the Range Rover with the same quiet efficiency that had defined his entire life. He opened the hood again, but this time Victoria watched him differently. She wasn't seeing a poor mechanic anymore. She was seeing Ruth's son, the child Ruth had left behind every single day to come take care of her. "You said she missed your graduation," Victoria said softly, still sitting in the dirt. "Which one?" Marcus didn't look up from the engine. His hands moved with surgical precision, disconnecting the damaged sensor. "High school. The big one, you know. The one where they call your name and your mama's supposed to be in the front row crying and taking pictures." He paused, his jaw tightening. "She was in Cancun with your family. Some last-minute trip your daddy decided on that morning." Victoria closed her eyes. She remembered that trip. She had been 17. Her father had surprised them with a private jet to Cancun because he'd closed a big deal and wanted to celebrate. She remembered being annoyed that Ruth had to come along because her mother refused to travel without proper help. She had never once thought about what Ruth might have been missing. "I sat in that auditorium," Marcus continued, his voice steady but heavy, "looking at all those other kids with their mamas and their daddies. My aunt came. She did her best, but it wasn't the same." He pulled out the burned sensor and examined it. "I didn't blame Mama, though. I knew she didn't have a choice. Your family paid her salary. She needed that money to keep me fed, keep a roof over my head, keep me in school." "Marcus, I'm so sorry." "I'm not telling you this so you'll apologize, Miss Blackwell." He finally looked at her, and there was no malice in his eyes, only exhaustion. "Apologies don't change what happened. I'm telling you because you asked, because you said you wanted to understand." Victoria nodded, hugging the shoebox closer to her chest. "I do. I need to." Marcus reached for a new sensor from his parts shelf. "When I was 10 years old, Mama sat me down and explained why she had to go live with another family. She told me that sometimes in life you have to make sacrifices for the people you love. She said she was going to work very hard so that I could have opportunities she never had." "Did you understand at 10? "Hell no." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I cried for a week straight. Begged her not to go. Promised I'd be good, like somehow her leaving was my fault." He installed the new sensor with practiced ease. "But she held my face in her hands and said, 'Marcus Jerome Johnson, you listen to me. Everything I do for you. And one day, when you're a man, you'll understand. You'll make me proud.'" Victoria felt fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. "She talked about you sometimes. When I was little, she'd show me pictures of her handsome son and tell me how smart you were, how you were going to be somebody important one day." Marcus stopped working. His hands gripped the edge of the engine bay, knuckles going pale. "She said that all the time. She was so proud of you, Marcus. She used to say that you were her greatest accomplishment, that everything else in her life was just survival, but you were her purpose." For a long moment, Marcus didn't move. Then his shoulders began to shake. "I gave up my scholarship for her," he said, his voice cracking. "Did she tell you that?" Victoria shook her head. "Full ride to UNAM. Automotive mechanical engineering. I was going to be the first person in my family to get a real degree. Mama cried when I showed her the acceptance letter. She said it was the happiest day of her life." He turned around and Victoria saw that his face was wet with tears. "Then she got sick, 2 months before I was supposed to start classes." He wiped his face with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of grease across his cheek. "The cancer was aggressive. Doctors said she needed treatment right away, but the good stuff, the stuff that might actually save her, it wasn't covered by insurance. And she didn't have money saved up because every penny she ever made went to me. Why didn't she ask my family for help? We would have—" "Would you?" Marcus cut her off, not unkindly. "Would you really? She worked for your family for 27 years, and when she got too old and too sick to be useful anymore, you know what your daddy gave her? A gold watch and 2 weeks severance. That's it. 27 years, Miss Blackwell. 27 Christmases. 27 birthdays. raising 2 children that weren't even hers, and she got a watch and a handshake. Victoria felt like she was going to be sick. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I was in New York when she left, starting my internship at Goldman. I didn't even know she was gone until I came home for Thanksgiving and there was a new housekeeper." "And did you ask? Did you wonder where she went? Did you pick up the phone even once?" The silence was damning. "No," Victoria admitted, her voice barely audible. "I didn't. I assumed she retired. I assumed she was happy somewhere enjoying her golden years. I never thought." "You never thought about her at all." Marcus's voice wasn't accusatory anymore, just sad, infinitely sad. "That's the thing about people like us, Miss Blackwell. We're invisible. We exist when you need us, and we disappear when you don't. You don't wonder where we go, because you don't think about us as real people with real lives." Victoria stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. She walked toward him, still clutching the shoebox. "You're right," she said. "You're absolutely right, and I hate myself for it." "Hating yourself doesn't help either." Marcus turned back to the engine. "Only thing that helps is doing better, being better." He worked in silence for a few minutes while Victoria watched. His hands moved with such confidence, such expertise. She thought about all the mechanics at the Range Rover dealership with their fancy computers and diagnostic tools and pristine white uniforms. 3 days they'd had her truck and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. This man in his grease-stained overalls in this crumbling workshop had diagnosed the problem in 5 minutes. "The scholarship," Victoria said suddenly. "What happened to it?" "I turned it down, called the admissions office and told them I couldn't come. They said they'd hold my spot for a year, but—" He shrugged. "A year turned into 2, 2 turned into 5. Then Mama died, and I had medical bills to pay, funeral costs, her debts. I took over this shop from my uncle when he passed. It's not much, but it's honest work." "You could still go back. You could still get your degree." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Miss Blackwell, I'm 38 years old. I've got a daughter to raise." "You have a daughter?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. His hands stilled on the engine. "Destiny. She's 12. His voice softened in a way Victoria hadn't heard before. "Her mama left when she was 3. Said she couldn't handle the life I was offering her, the struggling, the scraping by. So it's just been me and Destiny ever since." "Mama Ruth had a granddaughter," Victoria breathed. "She never told me. She never met her." Marcus's voice caught. "Destiny was born 3 months after Mama passed. She never got to hold her grandchild. Never got to sing her lullabies, or make her hot chocolate, or tell her stories about Mississippi." He slammed a wrench down harder than necessary. "Do you know what that does to me, Miss Blackwell? Knowing that my daughter will never know the most incredible woman who ever lived. Knowing that Mama worked herself to death for 27 years, and she never even got to enjoy the fruits of her sacrifice." Victoria reached out and touched his arm. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "Tell me about her," she said. "Tell me about her last days. I need to know." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped back from the engine and leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms over his chest. "The cancer started in her breast. By the time they caught it, it had already spread to her lymph nodes." His voice was flat, clinical, like he was reciting facts he had repeated too many times. "The doctors said chemotherapy might buy her some time, but the kind of chemo she needed, the good kind, it cost money we didn't have." "What about the hospital? Didn't they have programs assistants?" "They had waiting lists, forms to fill out, bureaucracy that takes months to navigate when you're poor and don't have lawyers and accountants to fight for you." He shook his head. "We tried, Miss Blackwell. We tried everything. I sold my car, took out loans, worked double shifts at the shop, and then went home to take care of her at night." Victoria thought about her own life during that time. She had been jet-setting between New York and London, closing deals, attending parties, buying designer clothes she wore once and then forgot about. while Marcus was selling everything he owned to try to save his mother's life. She fought hard, Marcus continued. 5 months she fought. Even when the chemo made her so sick she couldn't keep food down. Even when she lost all her hair and was too weak to get out of bed. She kept fighting because she said she wasn't ready to leave me yet. That sounds like her, Victoria whispered. She was the strongest person I ever knew. Toward the end, she started talking about you. You and your brother. Marcus's voice grew thick. She'd get confused sometimes. The pain medication made her drift in and out. She'd call out for you, ask when you were coming to visit. Victoria covered her mouth with her hand, a sob escaping. She kept your pictures by her bed. Did you know that all those years working for your family she'd taken pictures? Birthday parties, Christmases, first days of school. She had them in a little album, and she'd look at them every night before she fell asleep. Marcus, please. She told me once that she felt like she had 3 children. He continued relentlessly. Me, you, and your brother. She said the only difference was that I got the crumbs of her time while you two got the feast. But she loved all of us the same. She really believed that. Victoria was crying openly, now ugly sobs that racked her whole body. I loved her too. I did. I forgot. I got so caught up in my life and proving myself and being a Blackwell that I forgot the people who actually mattered. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. This was taken the day she died. He handed it to Victoria with trembling fingers. The image showed Ruth lying in a hospital bed, thin and frail, but smiling. Her eyes were closed and she looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. On her chest, someone had placed a small bouquet of wildflowers. I picked those for her that morning, Marcus said. From a field near our house. She always loved wildflowers. Said they reminded her of Mississippi, of her childhood before everything got so hard. Victoria traced her finger over Ruth's face in the photograph. She looks peaceful. She was at the end. The night before she passed, she grabbed my hand and made me promise her something. What? Marcus took a deep breath. She made me promise not to be bitter. She said, Marcus, don't you let hate poison your heart. Those children I raised, they're not bad people. They just got lost in all that money and privilege. Someday they'll find their way back. And when they do, I need you to forgive them. Victoria looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. How can you forgive us? After everything we did, after everything we didn't do. I couldn't, Marcus admitted. Not for a long time. For 3 years, I carried that anger around like a stone in my chest. I hated your family, hated everything you represented. Every time I saw a fancy car drive by, I thought about how my mother gave her life to people who didn't even care enough to send flowers to her funeral. What changed? He gestured toward the shoebox in her arms. I found those letters about a year ago. I was cleaning out Mama's things and I came across that box. I almost threw it away without opening it. But something made me look inside. You read them. Every single one. Took me 3 days because I kept having to stop and cry. He paused, gathering himself. And when I finished, I understood something I hadn't understood before. My mama didn't serve your family because she had to. I mean, she did have to. She needed the money. But she also loved you. Genuinely, truly loved you. Every letter was proof of that. Victoria looked down at the box in her arms, feeling its weight differently now. She saw something in you, Marcus continued. Something good, something worth believing in. And I realized that if I spent my whole life being angry at you, I'd be betraying her memory. She didn't raise me to be bitter. She raised me to be better. But how can you even stand to look at me? After the way I talked to you when I got here, after I called your shop a dump and treated you like you were nothing. Marcus almost smiled. That's the funny thing, Miss Blackwell. When you were standing there laughing at me, calling me a grease monkey, I felt that old anger rising up. I wanted to tell you exactly who I was and watch your face fall. I wanted to hurt you the way your family's indifference had hurt my mother. Why didn't you? Because then I heard Mama's voice in my head, clear as day, like she was standing right next to me. She said, "Marcus Jerome Johnson, you be the bigger person. You show her who you really are through your actions, not your anger." He pushed off from the workbench and walked back to the Range Rover. "So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to fix your truck in 15 minutes, just like I said. Not to prove anything to you, not to make you feel guilty, but because it's the right thing to do. It's what Mama would have wanted." Victoria watched him work, her mind reeling. This man had every right to hate her, every right to turn her away, to let her fancy truck sit broken in his lot while she missed her precious meeting. Instead, he was helping her, honoring his mother's memory by being exactly the person Ruth had raised him to be. "Your daughter," Victoria said suddenly. "Destiny. What's she like?" Marcus's hands slowed on the engine, and a genuine smile crossed his face for the first time. "She's everything good in this world. Smart as a whip, she's in the gifted program at school. Gets straight A's without even trying. And she's got her grandmother's heart. Always bringing home stray animals, always wanting to help people. She sounds amazing." "She is." The smile faded slightly. "She's also the reason I can't go back to school, even if I wanted to. I'm all she's got. I can't take time away from the shop to sit in classes. Can't afford to lose the income while I'm studying for tests. Every decision I make has to be about what's best for her." "But wouldn't getting your degree be better for both of you in the long run?" Marcus laughed, shaking his head. "You really don't understand how it works for people like us, do you? There is no long run, Miss Blackwell. There's just today. Just putting food on the table tonight, just paying the rent this month, just keeping the lights on. The future is a luxury poor people can't afford to think about." The words hit Victoria like a slap. She thought about her own life, the investments, the trust funds, the financial security that had been guaranteed since the moment she was born. She had never once worried about where her next meal would come from. Never once wondered if she would have a place to sleep. "Mama used to say the same thing," she admitted quietly. "She used to tell me how lucky I was. I never understood what she meant. Not really. Most rich people don't. No offense. None taken. I deserve worse." Marcus tightened one final bolt and stepped back from the engine. He checked his watch. 13 minutes and 42 seconds. He wiped his hands on his rag. "Go ahead. Try it." Victoria walked to the driver's door on unsteady legs. She slid into the seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Smooth. Powerful. Perfect. She sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the engine, thinking about everything that had happened in the last hour. When she got out of the truck, Marcus was already closing the hood. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. 300 pesos. That's what I charge everyone for this repair." Victoria opened her bag and pulled out her checkbook. Her hands were shaking as she wrote. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, watching her pen move. "Something I should have done a long time ago." She tore off the check and handed it to him. His eyes went wide. "This says 500,000 pesos. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. Miss Blackwell, it's not charity." Victoria's voice was firm, now certain. "It's a debt. A debt my family owes to your mother and to you. 27 years of service, Marcus. 27 years of love and sacrifice and dedication. And what did we give her in return? A gold watch and 2 weeks' pay." She pressed the check into his hand. "This isn't even close to what she deserved. What you both deserved. But it's a start." Marcus looked at the check, then at her, then at the check again. His jaw worked like he was trying to find words that wouldn't come. "I don't want your guilt money." "It's not guilt money, it's scholarship money." Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "Blackwell International has an education program for non-traditional students, adults who want to go back to school but couldn't because of life circumstances. I oversee all the applications personally. Miss Blackwell, you're going to apply, you're going to get your degree, and you're going to show your daughter that it's never too late to chase your dreams." Marcus shook his head, but Victoria could see something shifting in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Or fear. Or both. I'm 38 years old. I've got a shop to run, a kid to raise, and a mother who believed you could be anything you wanted to be." Victoria stepped closer. "You told me she made you promise not to be bitter. Well, I'm asking you to make me a promise too. Promise me you'll at least think about it. Promise me you won't let what my family did to your mother define the rest of your life." Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Why do you care? An hour ago you didn't even know I existed." "Because an hour ago I didn't know who I really was." Victoria looked down at the shoebox still tucked under her arm. "Your mother saw something in me, something I had completely forgotten existed. And if there's even a chance that she was right, that there's still a good person buried somewhere under all this privilege and arrogance, then I have to try to find her." She met his eyes, and for the first time since she had arrived at his shop, she felt something other than shame. She felt determination. "I can't change what my family did. I can't bring your mother back. But I can make sure her legacy lives on. I can make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." Marcus looked at the check in his hand, then at the photograph of his mother he still held in the other. For a long moment he stood there suspended between past and future, between anger and hope. Finally he nodded. "I'll think about it." Victoria let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "That's all I ask." She turned to walk back to her truck, but Marcus's voice stopped her. "Miss Blackwell." She looked back. "There's somewhere I think you need to go. Before you head to Mexico City. Before you do anything else." He paused, his voice heavy with meaning. "It's about 15 miles from here. I'll write down the directions." Victoria felt her heart rate quicken. "Where?" Marcus pulled a small notepad from his pocket and began writing. "The place where my mother is buried. She's been waiting 3 years for you to visit." He tore off the page and handed it to her. "I think it's time, don't you?" Victoria took the paper, her hand trembling. The meeting, the $400 million, the Japanese investors, none of it mattered anymore. "Thank you, Marcus," she whispered, "for everything." He nodded once, then turned and walked back into the shadow of his workshop. Victoria stood there for a moment longer, holding the directions to a grave she should have visited years ago. Then she got in her truck and started driving. The cemetery was smaller than Victoria had expected. No grand gates, no manicured lawns, no marble monuments reaching toward the sky. Just a simple iron fence, rusted in places, surrounding rows of modest headstones that stretched across a gentle hillside. Victoria parked the Range Rover and sat there for a long moment, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop for the past 15 minutes. 17 missed calls from her assistant. 23 text messages. 4 emails marked urgent. She turned the phone off and dropped it in her bag. The walk from the parking area to Ruth's grave felt like the longest journey of her life. Each step was heavy-weighted with guilt and regret, and all the things she should have said, should have done, should have been. She found the headstone in the 3rd row from the back. Simple gray granite weathered by 3 years of sun and rain. The inscription read, "Ruth Marie Johnson, 1954 to 2021, beloved mother, faithful servant, child of God." Victoria's knees buckled. She sank to the ground in front of the grave, not caring about the dirt staining her designer clothes, not caring about anything except the overwhelming wave of grief that crashed over her. "Mama Ruth," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment Victoria could almost hear Ruth's voice. That warm, gentle voice that had sung her lullabies and told her stories and promised her that everything would be all right. "I forgot you," Victoria continued, tears streaming down her face. "I got so caught up in being a Blackwell and proving myself to my father, in chasing money and success and all the things that don't matter. And I forgot the person who mattered most." She reached out and touched the cold stone, tracing the letters of Ruth's name with trembling fingers. "You deserved so much better than us. You gave us everything, and we gave you nothing. Not even a phone call. Not even a visit when you were dying." Victoria pulled the shoebox onto her lap and opened it again. She took out one of the letters, one she hadn't read yet, and unfolded it with shaking hands. The date at the top was from 8 years ago. "My darling Victoria," she read aloud, her voice breaking. "Today I watched the news and saw you on television. You were giving a speech at some fancy business conference, wearing a beautiful suit, looking so confident and powerful. I cried, baby girl. I sat in my little room and cried because I was so proud of you. You've become everything I always knew you could be, but I worry sometimes. I see the way your eyes look when you think no one's watching. I see the loneliness behind that perfect smile. I want you to know that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to need people. That's what makes us human. I love you always, Mama Ruth." Victoria pressed the letter to her chest and sobbed. "You saw me," she cried. "You really saw me, even when I couldn't see myself." She stayed there for what felt like hours, reading letter after letter, each one a window into Ruth's heart. Letters about Victoria's childhood, about her teenage years, about her early career. Letters full of advice and encouragement and unconditional love. And letters about Marcus. "My sweet boy is struggling." One letter read, "He works so hard, but life keeps knocking him down. I wish I could give him more. I wish I could be there for him the way I'm there for you and your brother. But I have to choose. Every day I have to choose. And God help me, I choose to stay with your family, because the money I make keeps Marcus fed and clothed and in school. But my heart breaks every time I say goodbye to him. Every single time." Victoria felt something shift inside her. For the first time, she truly understood the impossible position Ruth had been in. Loving two families, serving one while longing for the other, sacrificing her own happiness so that everyone else could thrive. "You gave up everything for us," Victoria whispered, "and we never even thanked you." Her phone buzzed in her bag. She had turned it back on without thinking, and now it was lighting up with notifications. She ignored them. Instead, she pulled out her checkbook and wrote something on the back of one of the checks. Not a number. Words. "I promise to do better. I promise to see people the way you saw them. I promise to make your sacrifice mean something." She tucked the note under a small rock at the base of the headstone. "I'll be back, Mama Ruth. I'll be back with flowers. I'll be back with Marcus. I'll be back to tell you everything that's happening, everything that's going to change." She stood up slowly, her legs stiff and aching. "Thank you for loving me," she said softly. "Even when I didn't deserve it. Even when I forgot how to love you back." She turned to leave, but something made her stop. A small figure was standing at the edge of the cemetery watching her. A girl, maybe 11 or 12 years old. Dark skin, bright eyes, hair pulled back in neat braids. She was wearing a school uniform and carrying a backpack that looked too heavy for her small frame. Victoria wiped her eyes and walked toward her. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Are you okay?" The girl tilted her head, studying Victoria with an intensity that felt almost familiar. "You're the lady from the fancy truck," she said. "The one who broke down at my daddy's shop." Victoria's breath caught in her throat. "You're Destiny." The girl nodded. "Daddy called me, told me to come here after school, said there was someone I needed to meet." Victoria felt fresh tears welling up. Marcus had sent his daughter here, to the grandmother she had never known, to meet the stranger who had treated her father so terribly just hours before. "Your daddy is a good man," Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know." Destiny walked past her, heading toward Ruth's grave, with the confidence of someone who had made this journey many times before. "I come here every week. Daddy brings me on Sundays, and sometimes I walk here after school when I miss her." "You miss her, but you never met her." Destiny knelt beside the headstone and touched it gently, just as Victoria had done. "I know her through Daddy's stories. He tells me about her all the time, how she used to sing hymns while she cooked, how she could fix anything with needle and thread, how she believed that every person had goodness inside them even when they couldn't see it themselves." Victoria walked closer, watching this child who carried Ruth's legacy in her young heart. "Your grandmother was the most important person in my childhood," she said. "She raised me. She loved me when my own parents were too busy to bother. And I threw that love away like it meant nothing." Destiny looked up at her with eyes that were far too wise for her age. "Daddy was angry at you for a long time," she said matter-of-factly. "He used to talk about the Blackwell family like you were villains in a story. But then he found Grandma Ruth's letters and everything changed." "Changed how?" "He stopped being angry. He started being sad instead." Destiny traced her grandmother's name with her finger. "He said that anger was like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Grandma Ruth taught him that. She taught him that forgiveness isn't about letting bad people off the hook. It's about setting yourself free." Victoria sank to her knees beside the girl. "Your grandmother was the wisest person I ever knew." "I wish I could have met her." "So do I, sweetheart. So do I." They sat in silence for a moment, two strangers united by the memory of a woman who had loved them both. "Daddy showed me your check," Destiny said suddenly. Victoria tensed. "What did he say about it?" "He said he couldn't accept it, that it was too much money, and he didn't want charity from someone who had treated him so badly." "It's not charity, it's—" "I know what it is." Destiny turned to look at her, and in that moment Victoria saw Ruth's eyes staring back at her. That same warmth, that same depth, that same ability to see straight through to a person's soul. "It's guilt, but it's also something else, something real." "How can you know that you just met me?" "Because you're here." Destiny gestured at the cemetery around them. "You could be at your fancy meeting in Mexico City. You could be making your millions of dollars. But instead you're sitting in the dirt next to my grandma's grave crying your makeup off." Victoria almost laughed. Almost. "Your daddy is wrong about the money," she said. "It's not about guilt, it's about justice. Your grandmother gave my family 27 years of her life, and we repaid her with nothing. That debt doesn't go away just because she's gone." Destiny was quiet for a moment, considering. "If you really want to honor Grandma Ruth," she said finally, "don't just give Daddy money. Give him something he can use." "What do you mean?" "Daddy dreams about going back to school. He doesn't think I know, but I've seen him looking at the university website late at night when he thinks I'm asleep. He had a scholarship once. Did he tell you?" "He mentioned it?" "He gave it up to take care of Grandma when she got sick, and now he thinks it's too late. He thinks his chance is gone forever." Destiny's voice dropped. "But it's not too late, is it? It can't be. Because if it is, then what was the point of Grandma's sacrifice? What was the point of any of it?" Victoria felt something crystallize inside her. A purpose. A mission. "It's not too late," she said firmly. "I'm going to make sure of it." "How?" Victoria pulled out her phone. The screen was filled with notifications, missed calls, urgent messages, demands for her attention. She ignored them all and opened her email. "I told your daddy about a scholarship program at Blackwell International, but I don't think he believed me. I don't think he trusts me enough yet." "Can you blame him?" "No, I can't." Victoria started typing rapidly. "But I'm going to prove to him that I'm serious. I'm going to set up a new scholarship fund. Not through the company. Through me personally. It's going to be called the Ruth Johnson Memorial Scholarship, and it's going to help people like your daddy, people who had to give up their dreams because life got in the way." Destiny's eyes widened. "You can do that. I can do anything I want with my money, and this is what I want." She finished typing and hit send before she could second-guess herself. The email went to her personal lawyer, her accountant, and the director of the Blackwell Foundation. "There," she said. "It's done. No taking it back now." Destiny stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across her face. "Grandma Ruth was right about you," she said softly. "What do you mean?" "Daddy read me some of her letters, the ones about you. She always said that you had a good heart hiding underneath all that fancy stuff. She said that someday something would happen to crack you open and the real you would come out. Victoria felt tears pricking at her eyes again. She really believed that. She believed it until the day she died. Destiny stood up and brushed the dirt off her school uniform. I better go. Daddy will worry if I'm not back soon. Victoria stood too. Let me drive you. It's the least I can do. Destiny hesitated, then nodded. They walked back to the Range Rover together, and Victoria opened the passenger door for her. As Destiny climbed in, her eyes went wide. This truck is so fancy, she breathed, running her hand over the leather seat. I've never been in anything like this. It's just a car, Victoria said, climbing into the driver's seat. 4 wheels and an engine. Your daddy could probably build one better from scratch. Destiny laughed. It was the first real laugh Victoria had heard all day, and it was beautiful. He probably could, she agreed. He can fix anything. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Destiny spoke again. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why were you so mean to my daddy when you first got here? The question hit Victoria like a punch to the gut. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, forcing herself not to look away from the road. Because I was scared, she admitted. Scared of missing my meeting. Scared of disappointing my father. Scared of being seen as weak or incompetent. She paused, searching for words that would make sense to a 12-year-old. And when I'm scared, I become someone I don't like. Someone who looks down on people. Someone who thinks she's better than everyone else because of the family she was born into. But you're not better than us. No, I'm not. If anything, your family is better than mine. Your grandmother sacrificed everything for the people she loved. My family just takes and never gives anything back. Destiny was quiet for a moment. Daddy says that people aren't born good or bad. They just make choices, and every day is a chance to make better choices than the day before. Victoria felt a lump forming in her throat. Your daddy is very wise. He learned it from Grandma Ruth. They arrived back at the workshop, and Victoria pulled the Range Rover to a stop. Marcus was standing outside, his arms crossed over his chest, watching them with an unreadable expression. Destiny jumped out of the truck and ran to him. Daddy, Miss Victoria took me to see Grandma's grave. We talked and talked, and she's going to start a scholarship in Grandma's name, and she says, you're going to go back to school. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. He looked from his daughter to Victoria and back again. Is that so? Victoria got out of the truck slowly, suddenly feeling very exposed. I sent the emails already, she said. To my lawyer and my accountant. The Ruth Johnson Memorial Scholarship Fund. It's going to be real, Marcus. I'm going to make sure of it. Marcus was silent for a long moment. His jaw worked like he was trying to find words that wouldn't come. Why? He finally asked. Why are you doing this? Because your mother believed in me, even when I didn't deserve it, even when I forgot her completely. Victoria took a step closer. And because your daughter just told me that people aren't born good or bad, they just make choices. Well, I'm making a choice, right now. I'm choosing to be the person Mama Ruth always believed I could be. Marcus looked at his daughter, who was beaming up at him with hope shining in her eyes. Destiny, he said quietly. Go inside and start your homework. I need to talk to Miss Victoria alone. But Daddy. Now, baby girl. Destiny pouted, but obeyed, disappearing into the workshop with one last glance over her shoulder. When she was gone, Marcus turned back to Victoria. I want to believe you, he said, his voice rough. God help me, I want to believe that you're sincere, but you have to understand I've spent 3 years hating your family, 3 years blaming you for everything my mother suffered. You can't just show up with a check and some pretty words and expect me to forget all of that. I don't expect you to forget, Victoria said. I don't even expect you to forgive, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I've changed, that I'm not the same woman who laughed at you this morning. That was only a few hours ago. I know. But sometimes a few hours is all it takes. Sometimes your whole life can change in 15 minutes. Marcus stared at her, and Victoria could see the war happening behind his eyes. The anger he had carried for so long, fighting against the hope his mother had planted in him. The desire for justice, battling the legacy of forgiveness Ruth had left behind. "My mother really loved you," he said finally. "I read her letters, every single one, and I could see it on every page. She loved you like you were her own blood. She was more of a mother to me than my biological mother ever was. I know. That's what makes all of this so hard." Marcus ran a hand over his face. "She loved you, and you forgot her. You left her to die alone. And somehow, despite everything, she still believed in you. She still saw good in you." "I want to be worthy of that belief," Victoria said. "I know I haven't been, but I want to try." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the check Victoria had given him earlier. "I can't take this," he said. Victoria's heart sank. "Marcus, not like this." He held up a hand. "Not as a payoff for my silence, not as guilt money from a rich woman trying to ease her conscience." "Then what do you want?" Marcus looked at the check, then at Victoria, then at the workshop behind him, where his daughter was waiting. "I want you to mean it," he said. "I want you to actually follow through on all these promises you're making. The scholarship fund, the changes, the becoming a better person." He stepped closer, his eyes intense. "Because if you're just going to throw money at this, and then forget about us again, I'd rather you leave right now. I'd rather go back to being invisible than be disappointed again." Victoria met his gaze without flinching. "I mean it," she said. "I've never meant anything more in my entire life." "How can you be so sure an hour ago you didn't even know we existed?" "Because an hour ago I didn't know who I really was." Victoria reached into the shoebox and pulled out one of Ruth's letters. "Your mother saw something in me that I had completely buried. Something I thought was gone forever. But it's not gone, Marcus. It's still here. I can feel it." She pressed the letter into his hand. "Read this one. It's from my 18th birthday. Your mother wrote about the person she believed I could become, and today, for the first time in my adult life, I want to be that person." Marcus looked down at the letter, then back at Victoria. "I'll read it," he said quietly, "and I'll think about what you said, but I'm not making any promises. Not yet. Not until I see that you can keep yours." Victoria nodded. "That's fair." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Marcus?" "Yeah." "The scholarship fund is going to be real. The first recipient is going to be you. I don't care if you accept it or not, it's going to be there waiting for you whenever you're ready." She paused. "And I'm going to visit your mother's grave every month. I'm going to bring flowers and talk to her and tell her everything that's happening. I'm going to make up for all the years I forgot her." Marcus's eyes glistened. "She would have liked that," he said softly. "I know." Victoria took a deep breath. "And one more thing." "What?" "Tell Destiny that her grandmother was right about all of it. The goodness hiding under the fancy stuff. The choices we make. Everything." She got into her Range Rover and started the engine. Through the window she could see Marcus standing there holding the letter in one hand and the check in the other. Behind him, Destiny had emerged from the workshop and was watching with wide, hopeful eyes. Victoria pulled out her phone and made one final call. "This is Victoria Blackwell. Cancel the Toyota meeting." There was a pause on the other end. "Ma'am, there's $400 million. I don't care." Victoria looked at the workshop in her rearview mirror, at the man and the girl who had changed everything in the span of an afternoon. "There are some things more important than money. I'm just now starting to understand that." She hung up and drove away, leaving behind the crumbling workshop, the winding highway, and the person she used to be. 3 weeks passed. Victoria had not returned to her normal life. She had not attended board meetings or charity galas or exclusive dinner parties. She had not answered her father's increasingly furious phone calls, or responded to the dozens of emails from her assistant asking where she was. Instead, she had rented a small apartment in the town near Marcus's workshop. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, a kitchen she was slowly learning to use. The first night she had burned scrambled eggs so badly the smoke alarm went off. By the 3rd week she could make a decent omelet. It was progress. She visited Ruth's grave every other day. Sometimes she brought flowers. Sometimes she just sat and talked, telling the headstone about everything that was happening, everything she was feeling. It felt strange at first talking to someone who couldn't answer. But slowly it began to feel like the most natural thing in the world. "I filed the paperwork for the scholarship fund," she told Ruth one morning, sitting cross-legged in the grass. "The lawyers tried to talk me out of it. Said it was too much money, too risky, too personal. I fired them and hired new ones." She pulled a blade of grass and twisted it between her fingers. "Marcus still hasn't cashed the check. I check my bank account every day hoping to see the withdrawal. Nothing. I think he's testing me, waiting to see if I'm really going to follow through." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. "Destiny came by my apartment yesterday. She brought me cookies she made herself, chocolate chip. They were a little burned on the bottom, but they were the best cookies I've ever tasted." Victoria smiled at the memory. "She's an amazing kid, Mama Ruth. You would be so proud of her. She has your eyes, your warmth, your way of seeing straight through to a person's soul." The phone buzzed again, and again. Victoria sighed and pulled it out. 17 missed calls from her father, 23 from the company, and 1 text message from her brother Leonardo that simply said, "Dad's on his way. He knows where you are. I tried to stop him." Victoria's blood ran cold. She stood up quickly, brushing grass from her clothes. "I have to go, Mama Ruth, but I'll be back. I promise." She drove back to her apartment as fast as she dared, her mind racing. Her father knew where she was. That meant he knew she had abandoned the Toyota deal. He knew she had canceled her meetings. He knew about the scholarship fund. He knew everything. When she pulled up to her apartment building, the black Mercedes was already there. Robert Blackwell was standing beside it, his arms crossed his face, a thundercloud of barely contained rage. He was 63 years old, but he still had the commanding presence of a man who had built an empire from nothing. Silver hair perfectly styled, custom suit that cost more than most people made in a month, eyes that could strip the confidence from a boardroom full of executives. Victoria parked her Range Rover and got out slowly. "Father, don't you father me." Robert's voice was ice. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any concept of the damage you've caused? I know exactly what I've done. $400 million, Victoria. $400 million. Gone. Because you decided to have some kind of mental breakdown in the middle of nowhere instead of doing your job." Victoria stood her ground. The Toyota deal would have gone through eventually. They're still interested. They were interested. Past tense. They signed with General Motors last week. Robert stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you understand? You cost this family $400 million because you were too busy playing Mother Teresa with some grease monkey and his brat." Something snapped inside Victoria. "Don't you dare talk about them that way." "Excuse me." "I said, don't you dare." Her voice rose to match his. "That grease monkey is the son of the woman who raised me, the woman who was more of a mother to me than my actual mother ever was, the woman who worked for our family for 27 years and was thrown away like garbage when she got too old to be useful." Robert's expression flickered, but he recovered quickly. "You're talking about the Johnson woman, the maid. Her name was Ruth Johnson. And she died 3 years ago, alone, in a county hospital, while we were on a yacht celebrating your birthday. That's not my responsibility. She wasn't family." "She raised your children," Victoria screamed. The words tore out of her like they had been trapped for decades. "She taught us how to read. She comforted us when we had nightmares. She celebrated our achievements and bandaged our wounds and loved us when you and Mother were too busy building your empire to notice we existed." Robert's face hardened. I'm not going to stand here and be lectured by my own daughter about what? About basic human decency, about treating people like they matter. Victoria laughed bitterly. You gave her a gold watch and 2 weeks severance, father, 27 years of her life, and that's what she was worth to you. She was compensated fairly for her work. She was family, or at least she should have been. She was more family to me than you ever were. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria could see her father processing them, his jaw tightening, his eyes going cold. You've lost your mind, he said finally. This little, whatever this is, it ends now. You're coming back to Mexico City. You're going to apologize to the board. You're going to make this right. No. I'm not coming back. I'm not apologizing. And I'm definitely not making this right, not by your definition. Victoria took a step closer to her father. I'm starting a scholarship fund in Ruth's name. I'm helping her son go back to school. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the love she gave me. Robert stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. You would throw away everything for some dead maid and her family. I would throw away everything for the woman who raised me when you couldn't be bothered. Father and daughter stood there locked in a battle of wills that had been building for 32 years. Finally, Robert spoke. If you do this, if you turn your back on the family business, I will cut you off completely. No trust fund, no inheritance, no safety net. Victoria had expected this, had prepared for it, but hearing the words out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. Do what you have to do, she said quietly. Robert's eyes widened. He had clearly expected her to back down, to cave under the threat. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Victoria pulled her shoulders back. I have my own money. Money I earned myself, not money that was handed to me. It's enough to fund the scholarship. It's enough to live on. It's enough. This is insanity. This is me finally becoming the person I should have been all along. Victoria met her father's eyes without flinching. Ruth Johnson saw something in me. Something good. Something worth believing in. And for the first time in my life, I want to prove her right. Robert was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost uncertain. You really loved her that much? The maid? She wasn't just a maid to me, father. She was my mother. The only real mother I ever had. Something shifted in Robert's expression, a crack in the armor, a glimpse of something human beneath the cold businessman exterior. I didn't know, he said quietly. I didn't know it meant that much to you. How could you? You were never there. You were always working, always building, always focused on the empire. You didn't notice when Ruth taught me to ride a bike. You didn't notice when she stayed up all night with me when I was sick. You didn't notice anything. Robert looked away. For the first time in Victoria's memory, her father seemed at a loss for words. I thought I was providing for you, he said finally. I thought that's what fathers do. They work. They provide. They build something to pass on. Children don't need empires, father. They need presence. They need love. They need someone to show up. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of unspoken words. Then Robert did something Victoria had never seen before. He sat down. Right there on the curb in front of her modest apartment building, in his $10,000 suit, he sat down like a man whose legs had simply given out. Tell me about her, he said. The Johnson woman, Ruth. Tell me who she really was. Victoria hesitated, uncertain if this was a trap, but something in her father's voice made her believe he was sincere. She sat down beside him. She used to make hot chocolate when I had nightmares, she began, with cinnamon and a little bit of vanilla. She said it was her grandmother's recipe passed down through generations of Johnson women in Mississippi. Robert nodded slowly, listening. She had this laugh that filled up whatever room she was in, and she sang hymns while she worked, old gospel songs her mother taught her. I can still hear them sometimes when I'm falling asleep. I remember the singing, Robert said quietly. I used to hear it sometimes coming from the kitchen. I never thought much about it. That was Ruth being Ruth. She found joy in everything, in cooking, in cleaning, in folding laundry. She said that every task was a chance to serve God and serve others. She sounds remarkable. She was. And she loved us, Father, despite everything. Despite the long hours and the low pay and the way we treated her like she was invisible. She loved us anyway. Robert was quiet for a long moment. I never thought about the staff as people, he admitted. Not really. They were employees, service providers. I paid them. I expected them to do their jobs. That was the extent of our relationship. That's the problem, Father. That's always been the problem. We're so used to having money that we forget the people who make our lives possible are actual human beings with families and dreams and feelings. And Ruth's son, the mechanic. Marcus. His name is Marcus. Victoria turned to look at her father. She missed his childhood to raise us. She missed his soccer games and his graduations and his birthdays. And when she got sick, we didn't even notice. We just let her disappear. Robert closed his eyes. I could have helped, he said, if I had known she was sick. I could have paid for treatment, the best doctors, whatever she needed. Would you have, though, really? Robert opened his eyes and met his daughter's gaze. For the first time, Victoria saw something there that looked like genuine regret. I don't know, he admitted. I'd like to think I would have, but honestly, I probably wouldn't have even noticed she was gone. The honesty surprised Victoria. Her father had never been one for self-reflection. What changed? She asked. Why are you being so human right now? Robert almost smiled. Your brother called me yesterday, Leonardo. He told me about the letters. What letters? The ones Ruth wrote to you, the ones you found in that shoebox. Robert looked at his hands. Leonardo said they were full of love, pure unconditional love, and he said that when he read them he realized something about our family. What? That we've never loved anyone that way. Not our children, not our spouses, not anyone. We've provided for people. We've given them money and opportunities and status. But love. Real. Love, the kind that sacrifices everything and expects nothing in return. He shook his head. I don't think any of us know what that even looks like. Victoria felt tears pricking at her eyes. Ruth did, she whispered. She knew. Yes, she did. Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Your brother gave me this. Said you might want to have it. Victoria took the paper with trembling hands. It was a letter, one of Ruth's letters, but this one was addressed to her father. Read it, Robert said. Out loud. Victoria unfolded the letter and began to read. Dear Mr. Blackwell, you don't know me, not really. I'm just the woman who cooks your food and cleans your house and raises your children while you build your empire. But I've watched you for 20 years, and I've seen something that maybe even you don't see. You love your children. I know you do. It's there in the way you look at them when you think no one's watching, in the way you work yourself to exhaustion to give them everything money can buy. But here's what I've learned in my 60-some years on this earth. Children don't remember the presents. They remember the presents. They don't remember the things you gave them. They remember the time you spent with them. Victoria and Leonardo are good kids. They have kind hearts hiding under all that privilege. But they're lonely, Mr. Blackwell. They're lonely for you, for their father. And all the money in the world won't fill that hole. I hope you understand this before it's too late. I hope you find a way to show them the love I know is hiding inside you. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that it's never too late to be the parent your children need. With respect, Ruth Johnson. Victoria's voice broke on the last words. Robert sat motionless, his face a mask of barely controlled emotion. She wrote that 15 years ago, he said. 15 years, and I never saw it until yesterday. Where was it? In my study, in a stack of papers on my desk. She must have left it there hoping I would find it, but I never looked at that stack. I just kept piling more papers on top. The metaphor was almost too perfect. "It's not too late, Father," Victoria said softly. "That's what Ruth was trying to tell you. That's what she believed about everyone. It's never too late to change." Robert looked at his daughter. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time. "I missed everything, didn't I? Your childhood, your teenage years, all of it." "Yes. And now you're sitting on a curb in front of a cheap apartment building, choosing a dead woman's family over your own. I'm choosing to honor someone who loved me. That's not the same as rejecting you." Robert was quiet for a long moment. "What if I wanted to help?" he said finally. "With the scholarship fund, with Ruth's son. What if I wanted to be part of this?" Victoria studied her father's face, looking for the angle, the business calculation, the strategic thinking that drove every decision he made. She didn't find it. "You would do that?" "I don't know if I'm capable of real change," Robert admitted. "I'm 63 years old. I've been the same man for 6 decades. But if Ruth believed that people can be better, that it's never too late." He paused. "Maybe I should start believing it too." Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, a crack in walls she had built over years. "The first thing you would need to do is meet Marcus," she said. "And apologize. Not as a business transaction, not as damage control. A real apology from one human being to another." "I don't know if I remember how to do that." "Then learn." That's what Ruth would have wanted. Robert nodded slowly. "Will you take me to meet him?" Victoria stood up and brushed off her clothes. Then she extended a hand to her father. "Ruth used to say that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step," she said. "This is your first step, Father. Don't waste it." Robert took her hand and stood. "I won't," he said. "I promise." Victoria looked at him, this man who had been a stranger for most of her life, and saw something she had never seen before. Hope. "Come on," she said. "Marcus should be at the shop, and I should warn you his daughter is probably there too. She's 12 years old and she has her grandmother's ability to see right through people. If you're not sincere, she'll know." Robert actually smiled, a small, uncertain smile, but real. "Then I better be sincere," he said. They got into Victoria's Range Rover together. As she drove toward the workshop, Victoria thought about everything that had happened. The breakdown, the mechanic, the letters, the grave, and now this. Her father sitting beside her willing to change. Ruth had been right about everything. It was never too late. When they pulled up to the workshop, Marcus was outside working on an old truck. He looked up when he heard the Range Rover and his expression shifted from curiosity to wariness when he saw the man in the passenger seat. "Who's this?" he called out. Victoria got out of the car and took a deep breath. "Marcus, this is my father, Robert Blackwell." Marcus's face went hard. "I know who he is. He wants to talk to you. He wants to apologize." "I don't need apologies from—" "Please." Robert's voice cut through the tension. He had gotten out of the car and was standing there, his expensive suit looking absurdly out of place against the backdrop of the humble workshop. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." Marcus looked at him with eyes full of decades of resentment. "5 minutes," he said finally. "That's all you get." Robert nodded and walked toward him. Victoria watched them go, watched her father approach the son of the woman he had never bothered to know. Behind her, she heard a door open. Destiny came out of the workshop, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "Miss Victoria, what's happening?" Victoria put her arm around the girl. "Something that should have happened a long time ago," she said. "Something your grandmother always believed was possible." They stood together, watching as Robert Blackwell began the hardest conversation of his life. And somewhere Victoria was certain Ruth Johnson was smiling. The conversation between Robert and Marcus lasted far longer than 5 minutes. Victoria and Destiny watched from a distance, unable to hear the words, but able to read the body language. At first, Marcus stood rigid, arms crossed, jaw set. Robert talked with his hands, something Victoria had never seen him do before. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of the boardroom armor that usually made him seem invincible. "What do you think they're talking about?" Destiny asked. "The truth," Victoria said. "Finally." After nearly an hour, something shifted. Marcus's shoulders dropped slightly. Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like a photograph. He handed it to Marcus, and the younger man stared at it for a long moment before his hand went to his face. He was crying. Robert Blackwell did something then that Victoria had never witnessed in her entire life. He stepped forward and embraced Marcus Johnson. Destiny gasped beside her. "Is your dad hugging my dad?" "I think he is." "But I thought they hated each other." "Hate is just love that got hurt," Victoria said softly, echoing words that Ruth had written in one of her letters. "Sometimes all it takes is someone being brave enough to say sorry." When the two men finally separated, they walked back toward Victoria and Destiny together. Marcus's eyes were red, but there was something different in his expression. The hardness that had lived there since they first met had softened just a little. "Your father wants to fund the entire scholarship program," Marcus said to Victoria. "Not just for me, for hundreds of people. He wants to call it the Ruth Johnson Foundation." Victoria turned to her father, stunned. Robert cleared his throat. "It's the least I can do. After everything my family took from Ruth, from her son, from all the people like them who gave us everything and got nothing in return." He paused. "Marcus showed me a picture of my children with Ruth. I don't even remember it being taken, but there we all were. Christmas morning, maybe 20 years ago. You and Leonardo were opening presents, and Ruth was in the background watching with such joy on her face." "I remember that Christmas," Victoria whispered. "Ruth made her special cinnamon rolls. She let me help with the frosting." "I don't remember any of it," Robert admitted. "I was probably in my study working on some deal that seemed so important at the time. But looking at that picture, seeing the way Ruth looked at you children..." His voice cracked. "That's love. Real love. And I missed it. I missed all of it." Destiny tugged on Victoria's sleeve. "Does this mean my daddy's going to school?" Victoria looked at Marcus, who nodded slowly. "I cashed the check this morning," he said. "Before you came, I was going to call you, tell you that I'd decided to trust you." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Looks like I made the right choice." 3 months later, the Ruth Johnson Foundation held its first official event. The ceremony took place at the newly renovated workshop, which had been transformed into a community center while maintaining its original character. Marcus had insisted on that. He didn't want to erase the humble beginnings, he wanted to honor them. Victoria stood at this podium, looking out at a crowd of over 200 people. Scholarship recipients and their families, local community members, business leaders who had heard about the foundation and wanted to contribute. And in the front row, Marcus and Destiny, sitting beside Robert Blackwell. "5 months ago," Victoria began, "I was a different person. I was arrogant, entitled, and blind to the people around me. I measured worth by bank accounts and zip codes. I treated invisible people like they didn't exist." She paused, her eyes finding Ruth's photograph displayed prominently beside the stage. "And then my car broke down in front of a small workshop, and a man I had never met told me he could fix it in 15 minutes. She smiled. "I laughed at him. I mocked him. I treated him like he was less than human. And then he told me who he really was, and my whole world shattered." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. "Ruth Johnson worked for my family for 27 years. She raised me. She loved me. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And when she got sick, when she needed us most, we abandoned her. We didn't even know she was gone." Victoria's voice broke, but she pushed through. "I can't change the past. I can't bring Ruth back. I can't give her son the childhood he deserved with his mother by his side instead of serving my family. But I can honor her legacy. I can help others the way she helped me. I can see people really see them the way she always did." She gestured to Marcus, who stood up slowly. "This man right here is the first recipient of the Ruth Johnson Scholarship. In 2 weeks, he starts his first semester at the university, pursuing the degree he gave up years ago to care for his dying mother. He's proof that it's never too late to chase your dreams." The crowd erupted in applause. Destiny jumped up and threw her arms around her father, tears streaming down her face. Victoria waited for the noise to subside before continuing. "But Marcus isn't just a scholarship recipient. He's my teacher. He taught me that dignity doesn't require money, that honest work has its own kind of wealth, that forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook, it's about setting yourself free." She looked at her father, who was watching with an expression she had never seen before. Pride, maybe, or something deeper. "And he taught me the most important lesson of all, that 15 minutes can change everything. 15 minutes of honesty. 15 minutes of vulnerability. 15 minutes of being brave enough to tell the truth even when it hurts." Victoria picked up the photograph of Ruth and held it against her heart. "Mama Ruth, if you're watching, I want you to know that you were right about all of it. The goodness hiding under the privilege. The choices we make every day. The power of love to transform even the hardest hearts." Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for seeing who I could be, even when I couldn't see it myself." After the ceremony, Victoria found Marcus standing alone by his mother's portrait. "She would have loved this," he said quietly. "You think so? I know so. This was her dream, not the fancy building or the scholarship money. Just people coming together, seeing each other, helping each other." He touched the photograph gently. "She always said that heaven wasn't some place up in the clouds. It was right here whenever people chose to love." Victoria stood beside him, looking at the face of the woman who had changed both their lives. "I have something for you," she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box wrapped in simple paper. Marcus took it with a puzzled expression. "What is this? Open it." He unwrapped the box carefully and lifted the lid. Inside was a key ring with a single brass key attached. "I don't understand." "That's the key to the original workshop," Victoria explained. "I bought the property last month. It's yours now, completely. No strings attached." Marcus stared at the key, then at Victoria. "You bought the workshop." "I couldn't let it disappear. Too much history there. Too much of your mother's spirit." Victoria smiled. "Besides, where else are people going to learn how to fix cars in 15 minutes? Marcus laughed a real full laugh that Victoria had never heard from him before. "You're something else, Miss Blackwell." "Victoria, please. I think we're past the Miss Blackwell stage." "Victoria." He tested the name like it was something new. "My mother would have been proud of you. I mean it. She always believed you would find your way back to who you really are." "I'm still finding my way," Victoria admitted. "Every day. But at least now I know which direction to walk." Destiny came running over, her face flushed with excitement. "Daddy, there's a reporter here who wants to interview you, and Victoria, there's a whole bunch of people who want to donate to the foundation." Marcus looked at his daughter, then at Victoria. "Guess we better get to work," he said. "Guess we better." They walked back toward the crowd together, the mechanic and the heiress united by a love they had both received from the same remarkable woman. 2 years passed. The Ruth Johnson Foundation grew beyond anything Victoria had imagined. Scholarship programs in 5 countries, community centers in underserved neighborhoods, mentorship networks connecting people from different backgrounds who never would have met otherwise. Marcus graduated from the university with honors. His thesis on sustainable automotive technology won a national award and attracted the attention of major manufacturers. He turned down job offers from companies that would have paid him 6 figures, choosing instead to open his own consulting firm focused on making vehicles affordable for low-income families. The original workshop remained exactly as it was preserved as a reminder of where the journey began. Destiny, now 14, had developed a passion for engineering that surprised no one who knew her grandmother's history. She spent her weekends at the workshop learning from her father and the young people who came to study there. Victoria had found her own path too. She stepped away from the executive suite at Blackwell International, choosing to dedicate herself full-time to the foundation. Her relationship with her father remained complicated, but it was real now. Honest. They had dinner together once a week, and sometimes Robert would ask about Ruth, genuinely curious about the woman he had never bothered to know. "She sounds like she was an extraordinary person," he said one evening. She was. "I wish I had paid attention when I had the chance." "You're paying attention now," Victoria said. "That's what matters." On the 3rd anniversary of the foundation, Victoria and Marcus stood together at Ruth's grave. The headstone had been replaced with something more fitting: pink marble, imported from Italy, with an inscription that read, "Ruth Marie Johnson, beloved mother, faithful friend, teacher of love. Her legacy lives in everyone she touched." Around the grave, flowers bloomed in every color. Visitors left them constantly: scholarship recipients, community members, people whose lives Ruth had touched in ways she never knew. 3 years, Marcus said quietly. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime." Victoria nodded. "Do you ever wonder what she would think about all of this?" "Every day." Marcus knelt and placed a fresh bouquet of wildflowers at the base of the headstone. "I talk to her sometimes. Tell her about the foundation, about Destiny's grades, about how the workshop is doing." He smiled. "I like to think she hears me." "I'm sure she does." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked. "Anything." "When you showed up at my shop that day, laughing at me, treating me like dirt, I hated you. I mean, really hated you. Every resentment I had built up over the years, every bit of anger about what your family did to my mother, it all came flooding back." Victoria winced, but didn't look away. "I thought about telling you to leave, letting your fancy truck sit there and rot while you missed your precious meeting. It would have felt so good to watch you struggle for once." "Why didn't you?" Marcus touched the headstone gently. "Because I heard her voice, clear as day, like she was standing right behind me. She said, 'Marcus Jerome Johnson, you be the bigger person. You show her who you really are through your actions, not your anger.'" Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. "So I fixed your truck. In 15 minutes, just like I promised. Not to prove anything, not to make you feel guilty, just because it was the right thing to do. Because that's how Mama raised me." "And look what happened," Victoria whispered. "Look what grew from those 15 minutes. Marcus stood and faced her. "That's the thing about my mother. She always said that you never know which moment is going to change everything. Which conversation, which act of kindness, which choice to be better instead of bitter." He pulled out a worn photograph from his wallet. It was the same picture Robert had shown him 2 years ago. The Blackwell children opening presents on Christmas morning, with Ruth watching from the background. "I keep this with me everywhere," he said. "Not to remember what your family took from mine, but to remember what my mother gave to yours. Freely, unconditionally, without expecting anything in return." Victoria looked at the photograph at Ruth's radiant smile. "She gave us everything," she said. "Yes, she did. And now we get to give it forward." They walked back to their cars together, past the rows of headstones, past the families visiting their own loved ones, past the groundskeeper who waved at them like old friends. "Same time next week?" Victoria asked. "Same time next week." It had become their ritual. Every Sunday afternoon, without fail. Rain or shine, no matter what else was happening in their lives. Because some promises are too important to break. As Victoria drove away, she passed the small workshop where everything had begun. Marcus had kept it running, training young mechanics who couldn't afford traditional education. The sign out front had been repainted, the colors now bright and welcoming. But underneath the fresh paint, you could still see the original letters if you looked closely. Johnson Auto Repair, General Repairs. And below that a new addition, in loving memory of Ruth Johnson. She saw the good in everyone. Victoria smiled and kept driving. 5 years later, on a sunny afternoon in December, over 500 people gathered in the courtyard of the brand-new Ruth Johnson Community Center. Victoria stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces. Scholarship recipients who had become doctors, engineers, teachers, business owners. Community members whose lives had been transformed by programs that Ruth would have been proud of. And in the front row, as always, Marcus and Destiny, now a beautiful young woman of 17, who had just been accepted to MIT's engineering program. 10 years ago, Victoria began. I was stranded on a highway with a broken-down truck and a broken spirit. I didn't know I was broken. People like me never do. We're too busy counting our money and collecting our achievements to notice the emptiness inside. She paused, her eyes finding Ruth's portrait displayed prominently above the entrance. And then I met a mechanic who told me he could fix my truck in 15 minutes. I laughed at him. I looked at his humble workshop and his stained overalls, and I saw nothing. Just another invisible person providing a service I was entitled to receive. The crowd was silent. But he saw me, really saw me. He saw the arrogance and the cruelty and the blindness. And instead of turning me away, instead of giving me what I deserved, he fixed my truck. He kept his promise. And then he told me about his mother. Victoria's voice wavered, but she pushed through. Ruth Johnson spent 27 years loving children who weren't hers. She sacrificed her own family to serve ours. She gave us everything, her time, her energy, her heart, and we never even said thank you. We let her disappear when she got old. We let her die alone when she got sick. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. I can never make that right. No amount of money, no foundation, no scholarship program will ever erase the debt my family owes to Ruth Johnson. But I can spend the rest of my life trying. I can see people the way she saw them. I can love without expecting anything in return. I can believe in second chances even for people who don't deserve them. She looked at Marcus, who was wiping his own eyes. Ruth's son taught me that forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook. It's about setting yourself free. And Ruth's granddaughter taught me that people aren't born good or bad, they just make choices. Every day, every moment, we choose who we want to be. Victoria stepped away from the podium and walked to where Ruth's portrait hung. This woman believed in me when I had given her every reason not to. She wrote me letters for 27 years, never sending them, just hoping that someday I would become the person she saw hiding inside me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm still becoming that person, every single day, but I'm closer now than I was, and that's because of her. She placed her hand on the portrait. Thank you, Mama Ruth, for the hot chocolate, for the lullabies, for the braids and the cookies and the bandaged knees, for teaching me how to be human. She paused. And thank you for your son, for raising a man who was strong enough to tell me the truth and kind enough to forgive me when I finally listened. The crowd rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Marcus made his way to the stage and stood beside Victoria. Behind them, Destiny joined, linking her arms through theirs. 3 people who never should have met. 3 lives transformed by a single woman's love. In the back of the crowd, Robert Blackwell watched with tears in his eyes. He had changed more in the past 5 years than in the previous 6 decades of his life. The foundation had become his passion, his redemption, his way of honoring a woman he had never bothered to know when she was alive. That night, after the celebration, Victoria sat alone at Ruth's grave. The moon was full, casting silver light across the headstones. "We did it, Mama Ruth," she whispered. 5,000 scholarship recipients, 20 community centers, 100,000 lives touched by your legacy. She smiled through her tears. Not bad for a rich girl who couldn't even make her own breakfast 10 years ago. She pulled out the worn shoebox that still held Ruth's letters. She had read them hundreds of times, but tonight she took out the very first one. My darling Victoria, you were 3 years old when I wrote this. Such a sweet child, always wanting to help in the kitchen, always asking questions about everything. I know your life will be full of privilege and opportunity. I know doors will open for you that remain locked for people like me and my son. But I also know something else. I know that underneath all that wealth and advantage, there's a heart worth believing in, a soul worth fighting for. Someday that heart is going to wake up. Someday you're going to see the world the way I see it, full of invisible people who deserve to be loved. And when that day comes, you're going to change everything. I believe in you, baby girl. I always will. Love, Mama Ruth. Victoria pressed the letter to her chest. You were right, she whispered. About all of it. She stood, brushed the grass from her clothes, and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, she knew Ruth was watching, smiling that warm smile, singing those old hymns, still believing in second chances even from heaven. It's never too late, Victoria said aloud, echoing the words Ruth had written so many times. It's never too late to see the good in people. It's never too late to change. And it's never, ever too late to love. She walked back to her car, leaving flowers at the grave. Behind her, the inscription on the headstone caught the moonlight. Ruth Marie Johnson. Her legacy lives in everyone she touched. And 15 years after a broken-down Range Rover brought two strangers together on a dusty Mexican highway, that legacy was still growing. Because real love never dies. It just multiplies. Forever.